You were the smart one, top of the class, quick with answers, the person everyone assumed would go far. So let me ask you something uncomfortable. Why is your bank account so quiet? You read more than the people who out-earn you. You understand more. You can take apart a bad argument in seconds and see flaws that others miss for years. And yet somehow the loud ones, the average ones, the ones who barely paid attention in the room you dominated, they're the ones buying the houses, building the businesses, sleeping without the quiet financial fear that seems to follow you everywhere you go. It doesn't make sense. Intelligence was supposed to be the ticket. You were told that if you were clever enough, disciplined enough, correct enough, the money would eventually find you. You were lied to, not on purpose, but completely, because nobody ever told you the most dangerous truth about being smart. Intelligence and wealth are not the same game. And the exact skills that make you intelligent can be the same skills that quietly keep you poor. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago, surrounded by some of the most brilliant minds in Florence. Men who could quote philosophy, calculate, argue, and theorize, and who still died with nothing. He noticed something that should disturb you. The cleverest advisors almost never held the real power. The men who ruled were frequently not the smartest people in the room. They were the most strategic, and there is a brutal, expensive difference between those two things. This is the explanation no one gave you. Why the smart stay broke. Not because the world hates intelligence, but because intelligence, left undisciplined, betrays the person who carries it. Quietly, politely, for years, and the betrayal is almost impossible to detect, because it never feels like a flaw. It feels like a virtue. Every trap I'm about to show you will look, from the inside, like one of your best qualities. That's what makes them so expensive. You don't defend a weakness. You'd cut a weakness out the moment you saw it. But you protect a strength. You feed it. You build your identity around it. And a flaw you're proud of is the one flaw you'll carry to the grave, defending it the whole way down. So I'm not going to tell you you're not smart. You are. That was never the problem. I'm going to show you the 9 ways your own intelligence has been working against you, and why the people you quietly consider beneath you keep walking past you on the climb. Let me show you exactly how it happens. Trap 1. You'd rather be right than be rich. Here is the first thing that destroys clever people, and almost none of them see it. You have been rewarded your entire life for being correct. In school, the right answer got the grade. In conversation, the sharper point won the respect. Somewhere along the way, being right stopped being a tool and became your identity. And once correctness becomes identity, you stop chasing outcomes and start chasing the feeling of winning. But the world doesn't pay you for being right. It pays you for being effective. Those are not the same thing. Watch a smart person in a negotiation. They will win every argument and lose the deal. They'll prove the other side wrong, dismantle the flawed logic, defend their position flawlessly, and walk away with nothing because they were so busy being correct that they forgot the entire point was to get paid, not to be acknowledged. Machiavelli had no patience for this. He wrote about advisors who valued their own cleverness over the result, and he watched them get discarded, because power doesn't care who's right. Power cares who moves the situation in their favor. A man who is technically correct and strategically defeated is still defeated. Think about the engineer who knows the product is flawed, says so loudly in every meeting, and is technically right every single time. And think about the average colleague beside him who says less, positions better, and gets promoted over him year after year. One of them is right. The other one is rising. The market does not reward the first man's accuracy. It rewards the second man's calibration. The uncomfortable truth is this: being right is satisfying. It feels like control. But it's a cheap, private pleasure that costs you the public victory. The wealthy learn to swallow the satisfaction of being right and trade it for the advantage of getting the outcome. So ask yourself honestly, how many times have you won the argument and lost the opportunity? How many times did you correct someone who could have helped you? How many doors did your need to be right quietly close? Because here's what makes this trap so dangerous. It doesn't feel like a weakness. it feels like a strength. And a weakness disguised as a strength is the hardest thing in the world to fix. You can't fix what you're proud of. But being right is only the surface of the problem. Because there's something smart people do that feels even more responsible, even more disciplined, and it wastes more years than arrogance ever could. Trap 2. You confuse knowing with doing. This one is the silent killer, and smart people are the most vulnerable to it of anyone alive. You love to learn, you read the books, you take the notes, you study the strategies, watch the breakdowns, understand the frameworks better than the people actually using them, and you feel productive while doing it. You feel like you're moving. You're not, you're hiding brilliantly. Here is the trap. For a clever person, learning feels like progress, because learning is the one arena where you're guaranteed to succeed. You're good at it. It's safe. There's no failure, no rejection, no risk of looking stupid, so you stay there. You keep accumulating knowledge you never use, because the moment you try to use it, you might fail, and failure is something your intelligence has never had to make peace with. So you become the most informed person who never executes. You know exactly how to build the business. You've never built it. You understand the market perfectly. You've never entered it. You can explain investing better than your friend, who is actually investing badly and getting rich while you wait for the perfect strategy that will never come. Machiavelli wrote that the world belongs to those who act while others hesitate, and that the man who waits for certainty before moving has already lost to the man who moved without it. He understood that information by itself changes nothing. A plan that is never executed is not a plan. It's entertainment. And clever people are addicted to that entertainment, because preparation gives you the feeling of progress without the risk of failure. It's the perfect drug for an intelligent coward. And I'm not insulting you. I'm describing a trap that catches the smartest people precisely because they're smart. The dumb ones can't hide in research. They have nothing to research with. So they're forced to just try things. And trying things, badly, repeatedly, is how wealth actually gets built. Picture two people who want to start a business. The intelligent one spends a year studying courses, books, business models, market analysis, the perfect plan. The average one starts a clumsy, embarrassing version in week 1, fails, adjusts, fails again, adjusts again. After 12 months, the smart one has a beautiful plan and 0 experience. The average one has a working business and a year of brutal, real education that no course could ever give. Same year. Opposite outcomes. And it had nothing to do with intelligence. And here's the part that should frighten you. The smart one is not lazy. They worked harder all year. They put in more hours, more thought, more genuine effort than the person who succeeded. That's the cruelty of this trap. It doesn't catch the idle. It catches the diligent. It lets you exhaust yourself every day on activity that feels exactly like progress and produces nothing until you look up years later, tired and informed and still exactly where you started. You weren't standing still. You were running on a machine that goes nowhere, and your intelligence built that machine and convinced you it was a road. So pause for a second. Don't think about what you know. Think about the gap between what you know and what you've actually done with it. Put that gap into a single word in your mind. Most smart people, if they're honest, will land on a word that stings. Because here's what nobody tells you. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. Everything else is just expensive decoration on a life that never changed. And once you understand that, you start to see why so many brilliant people overcomplicate the one thing that was supposed to be simple. Trap 3. You're addicted to complexity. Smart people have a secret problem with simple things. They can't stand them. When something is simple, it feels beneath you. If the answer is obvious, your intelligence has nothing to do. So you reach for the complicated version, the sophisticated strategy, the clever angle, not because it works better, but because it lets you use the one thing you're proud of. Your mind, and wealth at its core, is offensively simple. Spend less than you earn. Own things that grow. Build something people will pay for. Do it consistently for a long time. That's most of it. It's so simple. It's almost insulting. And that's exactly why smart people reject it. You don't want a boring index fund. You want the complex trade that proves you're cleverer than the market. You don't want a simple, profitable business doing an unglamorous thing. You want the intricate, brilliant, multi-layered idea that no one else is smart enough to see, and so you ignore the simple path that works in favor of the complicated path that flatters you. Machiavelli admired clarity above cleverness. He understood that the most effective strategies were often the most direct ones, and that complexity was usually a sign of confusion dressed up to look like genius. The ruler who needed an elaborate scheme to hold power had usually already lost it. Real power tends to be simple, brutal, and quiet. Think about Isaac Newton, one of the most intelligent humans who ever lived, a man who could describe the mathematics of the entire physical universe. He invested in the South Sea Company during one of history's great financial bubbles, lost a fortune that would be millions today, and afterward supposedly said he could calculate the movements of the stars but not the madness of men. His mind was not the problem. His mind was extraordinary. The problem was that extraordinary intelligence gave him no protection at all against a simple, ancient mistake: greed, timing, and the belief that he was too clever to get caught. That's the lesson. Intelligence does not protect you from the simple errors. Sometimes it makes them worse, because you trust yourself too much to follow the boring rule that would have saved you. The wealthy made peace with boring a long time ago. They found something that works, something simple, and they did it for 10 years while everyone else chased the clever shortcut. They were willing to be unimpressive on the way to being rich, and that willingness to be simple, to be boring, to do the obvious thing relentlessly, is something the addicted to complexity mind almost never allows itself. But the deepest version of this trap isn't about how you think. It's about something you refuse to do entirely. Something you've decided is beneath you. And that single refusal might be costing you more than every other trap combined. Trap 4. You believe the work should speak for itself. This is the belief that buries more talented people than any other, and smart people hold it like a religion. You think that if you're good enough, people will notice. That quality rises on its own, that you shouldn't have to promote yourself, sell yourself, or play the game of visibility, because the work is the point, and the work is excellent, and surely that's enough. It isn't. It has never been, and it never will be. Here's the brutal mechanism. People do not reward the best work. They reward the work they can see. The world is not a meritocracy that quietly measures everyone and pays out accordingly. It's a marketplace of attention, and attention goes to whoever positions themselves to receive it, not to whoever deserves it most. The most talented person in the building, unseen, earns less than the loud mediocrity everyone knows by name. You find this distasteful. That feeling, that distaste, is exactly the thing keeping you broke. Machiavelli understood that men judge mostly by appearances, that perception moves faster than truth, and that how you are seen often matters more than what you actually are. He wasn't being cynical. He was describing reality without the comforting lie wrapped around it. The strongest position in the world means nothing if no one knows you hold it. Look at the difference between Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison. Tesla was, by most accounts, the more brilliant mind, a genuine visionary, decades ahead. He died, nearly broke, alone in a hotel room. Edison was the relentless promoter, the businessman, the man who understood that an invention is worthless until people are convinced they need it. One man had the superior mind. The other man had the empire, and the difference between them was not intelligence. It was the willingness to sell. Or look at the painters who died penniless, certain their genius would be recognized, and it was, decades after they were in the ground, too late to feed them. Their work did speak for itself. Eventually, but eventually doesn't pay rent. Eventually is what you get instead of money when you refuse to do the unglamorous work of being seen. And understand why this trap is so seductive specifically for you. Refusing to promote yourself feels noble. It feels like integrity, like purity, like you're above the grubby business of selling. You get to feel morally superior to the loud people who are out-earning you. But strip away the flattering story and look at what's underneath, because the truth is uglier. It isn't principle. It's fear. wearing the mask of principle. You won't put your work in front of people, because if they reject it, they reject you, and you've decided that staying unseen and undefeated is safer than being visible and judged. So you call your fear a value, and you let it cost you everything. And you tell yourself you're the one with standards while the people without your hang-ups quietly build the life you wanted. Selling is not beneath you. Persuasion is not manipulation. Visibility is not vanity. They are the bridge between the value you create and the money you receive. And a smart person who refuses to build that bridge will stand on one side of the river, brilliant and broke, watching lesser people cross on theirs. You don't have to like it. You just have to stop letting your dislike of it cost you your life's work. Now pause again. Think about the most valuable thing you can do, the real skill, the actual edge you have, and then ask how many people know you can do it. Hold the gap between those two numbers in your mind. That gap is a measure of how much your pride is charging you. Because once you accept that being seen matters, you run into a harder question. Even when smart people do get paid well, they almost always get paid in the wrong way. Trap 5. You sell your time, even when it's expensive. This is the trap that catches the high-functioning ones, the successful-looking ones, the smart people who actually did okay, and then got stuck. You went and got good at something. You became valuable. And because you were valuable, someone offered you a good salary, and you took it. And you've been climbing ever since. From the outside, you're winning. Nice title, solid income, the smartest person on your team. And you are completely trapped. You just can't see the bars yet, because they're made of money. Here is the mechanism that breaks the high-earning smart person. You are still trading time for money. The price went up, but the trade is identical to the one the lowest paid worker makes. 1 hour of you in exchange for 1 unit of pay. And the moment you stop showing up, the moment you get sick, get tired, get fired, get old, the income stops with you. You don't own anything. You rent your life out by the hour at a premium rate, and you've convinced yourself that the premium rate means you escaped. You didn't. You just got more comfortable inside the cage. Machiavelli wrote about the difference between the man who controls his own forces and the man who depends entirely on others, and he warned that depending on someone else's structure, no matter how comfortable, leaves you at the mercy of forces you don't command. A well-paid dependent is still a dependent. The salary is the leash. A longer golden leash is still a leash. Real wealth comes from owning, not earning. From building something that produces value when you are not personally there to produce it. A business that runs without your hands on it. Ownership in things that grow while you sleep. Work you do once that pays you many times. The wealthy stopped asking how much they could earn per hour, because they understood that any answer to that question is a ceiling. They started asking what they could build that earned without them. Picture 2 intelligent people, same salary, same age. The first one optimizes their job. Better title, bigger raise, more hours sold at a higher rate. The second one takes the same income, but quietly uses a slice of their time to build something they own. 5 years pass. The first one is a more expensive employee, still trading hours, still one bad meeting from collapse. The second one has a small, ugly, growing asset that pays them whether they show up or not. Same intelligence, same starting point. One built a higher cage, the other built a door. Notice what makes this trap nearly invisible. Everyone around you applauds the wrong move. When you take the bigger title and the higher salary, people congratulate you. Your family is proud. The world tells you you're winning. Nobody throws a party when you start a small, embarrassing thing on the side that earns almost nothing in year 1. So you get rewarded, socially and emotionally, for tightening your own leash, and you get no applause at all for building the door. The trap doesn't just hold you, it pays you to stay, and praises you for it, while the quieter path that actually leads out looks from the outside like a step backward. The cruelest part is that the smart, high-earning trap is the hardest to escape because it's so comfortable. Poverty creates pressure to change. A good salary removes that pressure entirely. It pays you just enough to keep you exactly where you are. And so the cleverest people often stay the longest, anesthetized by a paycheck that's large enough to silence the part of them that knows they were built for ownership, not employment. But comfort isn't the only thing holding you in place. There's a fear underneath all of this, a fear that intelligence makes worse, not better. Trap 6. You fear looking foolish more than you fear staying poor. Here is a fear that ordinary people barely feel, and that quietly governs the entire life of a smart person. The fear of looking stupid. You've built your whole identity on being capable, on being the one who knows, on being competent and sharp and never caught out. And that identity has become a prison. Because to build wealth, you have to do things you're bad at. You have to be a beginner in public. You have to fail visibly in front of people who knew you as the smart one. And for someone whose entire self-worth is wired to intelligence, that risk feels worse than death. It feels like the loss of the self. So you don't start. You don't try the thing you might fail at. You stay in the lane where you're already excellent, because in there, your identity is safe. And safety of identity, for a clever person, is worth more than money. That's the trap. You will choose protecting your image of yourself over improving the reality of your life every single time, without even noticing you're doing it. Machiavelli observed that fortune favors the bold, but the part people forget is what boldness actually requires. It requires the willingness to be wrong in front of others, to act before you're sure, to risk humiliation. The bold are not fearless. They've simply decided that the fear of staying small is greater than the fear of looking foolish. The smart person has the equation backwards. They'd rather stay small and intact than grow and be exposed. And the higher your intelligence, the further the fall feels. When the slow kid fails, no one's surprised. And neither is he. When the smart one fails, it contradicts the entire story he's told about himself. So, the smart one protects the story by never putting it at risk. He stays brilliant and small, untested and undefeated, and broke. Think about how a child learns to walk. They fail constantly, publicly, with no embarrassment at all because they have no identity to protect yet. That fearlessness is exactly why they learn so fast. Somewhere, on the way to becoming intelligent, you traded that fearlessness for a reputation, and the reputation has been quietly taxing your growth ever since. Every skill you didn't learn because you might be bad at it. Every venture you didn't start because it might fail. Every risk you talked yourself out of with a clever-sounding reason that was really just fear wearing a disguise. The wealthy made a different trade. They decided their ego was a luxury they couldn't afford. They were willing to be the worst person in the room, the beginner, the obvious amateur, because they understood that the discomfort of looking foolish is temporary, and the cost of staying safe is permanent. You will not get rich while protecting your image. Pick one. The market does not let you keep both. And here's where it gets darker. Because the way you protect that image isn't just about what you avoid doing, it's about who you choose to keep around you. Trap 7. You surround yourself with people who confirm you, not challenge you. A smart person needs to be the smartest in the room, and that need is quietly bankrupting you. It feels good to be the sharpest one present, to be the one others come to for answers, to be respected, deferred to, the obvious intellect in the group. So, without ever deciding it consciously, you arrange your life around rooms where that's true. You keep company with people who confirm your intelligence rather than threaten your position, and it feels like comfort. It's actually a ceiling. Here's the mechanism. The people around you set the boundary of what you believe is normal. Normal income, normal ambition, normal risk, normal life. If everyone you know trades time for a salary and considers wealth a fantasy, then wealth will feel like a fantasy to you too, no matter how intelligent you are. Your intelligence will simply get spent justifying the same small life everyone around you is living. The smartest person in a room full of employees usually becomes a slightly better paid employee. Nothing more. Machiavelli understood that proximity shapes destiny, that the company a man keeps determines the opportunities he sees and the moves he believes are possible. He paid close attention to who surrounded the powerful, because he knew that no one rises in isolation, and no one rises among people committed to staying still. You become the strategic average of the people you spend your time with, and your intelligence does not exempt you from that law. It just makes you more articulate about why your particular cage is reasonable. The people who build real wealth do something that feels deeply uncomfortable for a smart person. They deliberately put themselves in rooms where they are not the smartest, not the most accomplished, not the most successful. Rooms where they feel small, underqualified, out of place. Because that discomfort is the exact sensation of growth. If you are always the most impressive person present, you have selected a room designed to keep you exactly where you are. Picture the two paths. One intelligent person stays in the familiar circle, friends from school, the same conversations, the comfortable role of the clever one. Another, equally intelligent, walks into rooms full of people already living the life they want, says less, listens more, and absorbs an entirely different sense of what's possible. 5 years later, the first one is the wisest person in a stagnant pond. The second one has been reshaped by water they could barely keep their head above. Same mind, different rooms, wildly different lives. Your ego wants you to be the smartest in the room. Your future needs you to be the least accomplished. You cannot serve both, and the side you choose, quietly, every day, is deciding your entire trajectory. But even with the right people around you, there's one more trap, and it's the one that looks the most responsible, the most mature, the most like wisdom. It isn't. Trap 8. You mistake stability for safety. This is the trap that wears the best disguise, because everything about it looks like good judgment. You value stability, the secure job, the reliable income, the predictable life with no nasty surprises. You're not reckless like those gamblers chasing risky ventures. You're sensible, measured, responsible, and being intelligent, you can build a remarkably stable life. A good job, good credit, a comfortable lifestyle, all the pieces in their place. You've built yourself a beautiful, comfortable, perfectly maintained cage, and you call it safety. Here's the mechanism nobody warns you about. Stability and safety are not the same thing. Stability means nothing changes. Safety means you can survive when things change, and things always change. Jobs vanish, industries collapse, the economy turns, the skill you depend on becomes obsolete. And the person who built their entire life around the assumption that nothing would change is the least safe person of all when it finally does. Their stability was an illusion the whole time. It was just risk that hadn't arrived yet. Machiavelli warned that men grow comfortable in calm weather and forget that the storm is coming, and that the failure to prepare during good times is what destroys them when the times turn. He believed danger never disappears, it only waits, and the comfortable man is the one it catches by surprise. The wealthy understand this in their bones. They're not chasing safety, because they know the safe-looking path is often the most dangerous one. They're chasing control over their time, their income, their options, so that when the storm arrives, and it always does, they're the ones who can move. A single income from a single employer is not safety. It's total dependence on one decision-maker who didn't promise you anything and can change their mind on a Tuesday. Multiple income streams, things you own, skills that travel, money working in several places at once. That is safety. It looks riskier from the outside. It's the opposite. The person with one job feels stable and is fragile. The person with 5 income sources feels chaotic and is durable. Appearances lie, exactly as Machiavelli said they would. The cruelest version of this trap is what it does over time. Comfort doesn't strike you down, it lulls you. Year after year of pleasant stability slowly erodes your ambition, your edge, your willingness to take the risks that build real wealth. You stop reaching, you stop building. You tell yourself you're being responsible while your most valuable years quietly drain away inside a life that feels safe and is actually just slow. And by the time the illusion finally breaks, a layoff, a collapse, a sudden change, you've spent your boldest decades guarding a stability that was never real. Stability is a feeling, safety is a structure. Stop optimizing for the feeling, build the structure. There's one final trap, and it's the one most smart people will never overcome, because it asks them to abandon the part of themselves they consider most virtuous. Trap 9. You refuse to be ruthless with your own decisions. The last trap is the deepest and the hardest, because fixing it requires becoming someone you might not want to be. You are sentimental, loyal, patient. You hold on. You give the failing project more time. You stay in the relationship, the job, the venture, the city, long after the evidence has turned, because walking away feels like betrayal or failure or admitting you were wrong. You honor your past decisions even when they've become anchors, and you call this loyalty, patience, integrity. It's none of those. It's an inability to be ruthless with yourself, and it is quietly draining your life. Here is the mechanism. Wealth requires the constant willingness to cut, to kill what isn't working, to walk away from the sunk cost, the dead investment, the relationship that drains you, the venture that consumed 2 years and will never pay off. The market rewards people who can look at something they love, something they built, something they bet on, and end it coldly the moment it stops serving the larger goal. Most smart people cannot do this. They're too attached to their own past choices. Their intelligence becomes a machine for generating reasons to hold on when the strategic move is to let go. Machiavelli is famous and feared for exactly this. He understood that effective action sometimes requires a coldness that gentle people cannot stomach, that a ruler who cannot cut, who cannot make the hard decision because it feels cruel, will lose everything to a rival who can. He didn't celebrate ruthlessness for its own sake. He simply observed that the world does not reward people who are too soft to do what the situation requires, and that hesitation born of sentiment has destroyed more men than any enemy ever did. This doesn't mean becoming heartless. It means becoming honest about cost. The 2 years you already spent on the dying project are gone. They're spent whether you continue or not, and every additional day you spend honoring them out of sentiment is a fresh loss stacked on top of the old one. The strategic mind feels the pull of loyalty and overrides it. The sentimental mind feels the pull and obeys it, then dresses up the obedience as a virtue. Picture 2 people running failing ventures. The first one, attached and loyal, pours another year into it because quitting feels like betrayal of the dream. The second one looks at the same evidence, feels the same pain, and cuts it in a week, then redirects everything into something that actually works. Both of them were intelligent. Both of them were emotionally invested. One let the sentiment govern the decision. The other let the decision govern the sentiment, and only one of them was free to win. The wealthy are not crueler than you. They're just more honest with themselves about when something is over. They've made peace with the discomfort of cutting because they understand that the refusal to cut is itself the most expensive decision of all. Every dollar, every hour, every ounce of energy trapped in a dead thing is $1, an hour, an ounce that can never be deployed into a living one. Be loyal to your goal, not to your past decisions. The two are not the same, and confusing them will cost you everything. The real explanation, so now you see it. The pattern underneath all 9 traps. Smart people don't stay broke because they lack intelligence. They stay broke because intelligence is not the skill that builds wealth, and they spend their whole lives refining the wrong tool, polishing it, perfecting it, getting ever sharper at a thing that was never going to make them rich. They optimize for being right, for knowing, for complexity, for being seen as capable, for stability, for staying intact. And every one of those instincts, which feels like a strength, is the precise mechanism of their poverty. This is what Machiavelli understood that the brilliant men around him never did. Power is not a function of intelligence. It's a function of strategy, action, positioning, and the willingness to do what the soft and the clever refuse to do. The cleverest advisor in the court could be discarded in an afternoon by a less intelligent man who simply understood the game better. Intelligence was a tool. Strategy was the hand that wielded it. And a tool without a hand is just an object lying on the ground, impressive and useless. Here is the reframe that changes everything, if you let it. Wealth was never a test of how smart you are. It's a test of how strategic you're willing to become. And those are different muscles entirely. You've been training one for your whole life and neglecting the other, and then wondering why the people with weaker minds keep beating you. They're not beating you with intelligence. They're beating you with the thing you've been too smart to learn. The good news is brutal and freeing at the same time. If your problem were intelligence, you'd be stuck. You can't change how smart you are. But your problem was never intelligence. It was undisciplined intelligence. And discipline can be learned. Strategy can be learned. The willingness to act, to be seen, to own, to cut, to be the least impressive person in a powerful room, all of it can be learned by anyone willing to stop protecting the version of themselves that being smart built. And this is the part that should give you hope, even as it stings. Every single trap I've described is a choice you're making, over and over, in moments so small you don't even register them as decisions. The argument you chose to win, the thing you studied instead of started, the post you didn't publish, the room you stayed comfortable in, the dying project you couldn't cut. None of these are fixed features of who you are. They're habits of a mind that was never taught the difference between being clever and being strategic. Habits can be broken. Not easily, not comfortably, but they can be broken by anyone who decides the cost of keeping them is finally too high. You are not trapped by your nature. You're trapped by patterns you mistook for your nature. And the moment you see that clearly, the cage door was never locked at all. So don't think about how intelligent you are. You already know that, and it hasn't helped you. Think about something harder. Think about who you'd have to become to actually use it, not the smart one. Something colder, sharper, more dangerous than that. Put that person into a single word in your mind, right now, because that word is the version of you that the next decade is waiting for, and the only thing standing between you and him is the comfort of staying exactly who you are. The smartest people in the world are not the wealthiest. They never have been. The wealthiest are the ones who took whatever intelligence they had, average, high, doesn't matter, and aimed it ruthlessly at the real game instead of the comfortable one. They stopped collecting reasons and started taking ground. They stopped protecting their image and started building their position. They stopped being right and started being effective. You can keep your intelligence. Nobody's asking you to give it up. But you have to stop letting it run your life from the back seat, generating sophisticated reasons to stay exactly where you are. Aim it. Discipline it. Point it at the game that actually pays. Because an undisciplined mind is the most expensive thing a person can own, and you've been paying for yours your entire life without ever seeing the bill. Most people who hear this will agree, feel something flicker, and then return to the same comfortable patterns by tomorrow morning, too clever to be saved by a truth they understood perfectly and refused to use. That's the final trap, the one that contains all the others. Understanding this changes nothing. Only acting on it does. So here's the only question that matters now. You finally know why the smarts stay broke. The single thing left to decide is whether knowing will be enough to stop you from becoming the proof. Most will let it be enough. They'll nod and stay. A rare few will be disturbed enough to actually move. I built this for the few. If you're one of them, you already feel it. Stay close. This was only the first layer, and the deeper ones reward the people willing to keep going. Whatever you do, don't be the smartest person who understood everything and changed nothing. Decide which one you are. Then go prove it.